And Princess of Wales have released a really lovely video for Princess Charlotte's 11th birthday, and she could be in line to join England's pace bowlers, we're told.
Just at the peak of Princess Charlotte's birthday celebration, it exploded into absolute chaos behind palace doors. A festive family gathering at Windsor Castle turned into a bitter shouting match after Prince William discovered Queen Camilla had secretly taken a priceless royal heirloom out of the vaults for her own grandchildren. This wasn't an innocent mix-up. It was a blatant violation of a strict family agreement regarding Charlotte's future inheritance. William instantly halted the party, demanding the immediate return of the historic treasure. The war over the royal bloodline has officially reached the next generation, and the lines are drawn deeper than ever before. A birthday cake, untouched at Windsor Castle. A tier of vanilla birthday cake, decorated with hand-piped sugar flowers, sat entirely untouched on a silver presentation stand inside the Oak Room at Windsor Castle. It was early afternoon. The festive colored balloons and wrapped gifts on the side tables were completely ignored by the family members standing near the fireplace. Princess Charlotte stood quietly next to her mother, looking down at the carpet, while the festive atmosphere of her birthday gathering collapsed around them. Across the room, Prince William stood with his arms crossed, his face pale with absolute fury. On the table between him and Queen Camilla lay a small, open velvet box containing an object that should never have left the high-security vaults of the Royal Collection Trust. The facts of that sudden confrontation were recorded in the private internal logs of the Windsor Castle domestic staff. The gathering had been planned as a strictly private, low-profile family tea to mark Charlotte's milestone birthday. Only immediate family members and a few close-step relatives had been invited to the private apartments. The tension exploded less than 10 minutes before the candles were scheduled to be lit. William had noticed a small diamond-encrusted object pinned to the collar of a dress worn by one of Camilla's young step-granddaughters who had accompanied her to the castle. He recognized the rare piece instantly from the historical inventory plates he had reviewed during his Duchy of Cornwall asset audits. The object was Queen Victoria's private diamond miniature portrait case. This priceless 19th century heirloom featured a delicate hand-painted portrait of the young Queen Victoria, framed by a continuous border of old mine brilliant diamonds and suspended from a matching bow of pure platinum. Under a strict multi-generational family agreement established during the reign of King George VI, this specific piece was legally designated as an inalienable asset of the sovereign bloodline. It was traditionally held in the central vaults until being formally gifted to the firstborn granddaughter of the Prince of Wales upon her transition into public life. Camilla had bypassed this rule completely, secretly removing the item to adorn her own non-blood descendant for a private family photograph session. William did not wait for the catering staff to leave the room before addressing the breach. He walked over to the young girl, politely but firmly unpinned the historic heirloom from her collar, and placed it in its original display box on the table. He then turned to Queen Camilla and demanded an immediate, face-to-face explanation for how an item of state heritage had been taken from the high-security storage facility without his or Catherine's parental consent. The sudden intervention caused the entire room to fall into a dead, shocked silence as the celebratory mood of the afternoon evaporated instantly into a bitter constitutional dispute. The mystery that William's private office scrambled to unpack in the hours following the incident was how Camilla had managed to secure the physical release of the miniature case from the custodians of the vault. The answer was found in a series of digital logging sheets retrieved from the Royal Collection Trust warehouse system. 3 days prior to the party, Camilla had used her administrative authority as Queen Consort to sign a temporary fashion appraisal waiver. The document stated that the item was being moved to her private dressing room for routine cleaning and a setting evaluation by an independent jeweler. It was a classic administrative maneuver, hiding a highly irregular personal removal behind the facade of routine palace maintenance. William viewed the secret removal not as an innocent mistake, but as a deliberate and dangerous provocation. He believed that Camilla was actively trying to normalize the use of crown heirlooms by her own first family, effectively blurring the lines between blood royalty and the Parker Bowles lineage on official castle grounds. He knew that if a photograph of Camilla's step-granddaughter wearing Queen Victoria's diamonds was ever leaked to the international press, it would create a massive public relations disaster. The public would view it as a gross misuse of national treasures, cheapening the unique birthright and historical inheritance that belongs strictly to Princess Charlotte. The confrontation in the Oak Room quickly escalated into a broader argument over the future management of the family's historic property. Camilla defended her actions with intense conviction, arguing that the party was a private family event, and that allowing a young child to wear a pretty piece of family history for a private photo session was entirely harmless. She accused William of running a petty paranoid surveillance campaign against her household, and claimed that his obsession with keeping her family isolated from the crown's assets was becoming actively destructive to the marriage's internal harmony. William remained entirely unmoved by her arguments. He looked at his stepmother and stated in a clear, rigid voice that the rules of the lineage were absolute, regardless of whether an event was public or private. He reminded her that the items stored in the Waterloo Vault were not personal trinkets to be passed around among civilian relatives. They were the property of the state, held in trust for the direct line of succession. He told her that by using a fraudulent cleaning waiver to smuggle diamonds out of the vault for her own grandchildren, she had committed a profound breach of trust that would completely alter how her household accessed the palace archives for the remainder of the king's reign. King Charles attempted to step in to defuse the situation before the argument reached a permanent point of no return, but his intervention did little to cool the prince's fury. William refused to allow the birthday tea to continue until the diamond miniature case was physically escorted back to the main security station by an independent audit supervisor. He stood by the table, watching the security box be locked and sealed, and completely refused to cut the birthday cake or take part in any further family photographs, while Camilla remained in the room. The lines had been drawn with absolute clarity, and the celebration ended in total chaos. The fallout from Charlotte's birthday party marked a permanent turning point in the internal power struggle between Adelaide Cottage and Clarence House. William had demonstrated that he would not hesitate to shut down a family gathering to protect his children's inheritance from outside family influence. He had successfully recovered the historic treasure, but the emotional damage inside the private apartments was total. The battle for the royal bloodline had officially reached the next generation, leaving a cold, bitter silence echoing through the ancient stone corridors of Windsor Castle. The mystery of the missing miniature. The overhead neon lighting of the Windsor Castle security basement hummed quietly as a team of 3 independent auditors sat before a large computer terminal. It was the evening of May 2nd, 26. A digital high-resolution scanner ran a blue laser line across the surface of a handwritten ledger sheet from the Royal Collection Trust archive. The spreadsheet tracked every single item listed under the historic category of Sovereign Children Heirlooms. Column 42, which usually contained a digital verification timestamp and a barcode link for item number 098, was completely empty. The item was flagged as physically absent from its assigned vault position without a valid return manifest. The facts about this particular miniature explained why its sudden disappearance triggered an immediate institutional panic within the palace. The piece was commissioned by Queen Victoria in 1838, shortly after her coronation. The central portrait was painted on a thin sheet of ivory by the famous court artist Sir William Ross, showing the young queen in her full robes of state. The surround was constructed from 24 matched old mine cushion-cut diamonds, totaling 15 carats, mounted in an intricate open-backed setting of pure platinum. It was not a piece of personal fashion jewelry. It was a formal, historical instrument of the crown, specifically designed to mark the birth of the first legitimate female grandchild in the direct line of succession. The tension over the object's physical location had been mounting since early morning. According to the strict security protocols updated by the Privy Purse in 24, any item taken from the Sovereign Children's Heirlooms vault for display or maintenance required a joint digital signature from both the master of the household and the private secretary of the direct heir to the throne. Prince William's office had received absolutely no notification regarding item 098. When Princess Catherine's personal dresser contacted the vault to request the miniature for Charlotte's official birthday portrait session, the head custodian was forced to admit that the velvet tray inside the safe was completely bare. The subsequent investigation into the missing treasure led straight to the highest levels of the Queen's household. The digital logging sheets from the Royal Collection Trust warehouse system revealed that the item had been checked out under a highly irregular temporary fashion appraisal waiver. The document bore Queen Camilla's personal initials and had been processed during the late-night shift on April 28, 26. The clerk who authorized the release testified to the internal audit team that the Queen's personal secretary had presented the waiver as a routine, urgent request for a setting evaluation by a court jeweler. The diamond miniature had been taken out of the secure perimeter without any security escort or independent tracking device. The ultimate mystery that the king's legal advisors had to solve was whether this removal was a simple administrative oversight or a calculated attempt to challenge the established rules of royal inheritance. The answer came to light when an internal palace courier delivered a set of private photograph proofs to the Lord Chamberlain's office on the morning of Charlotte's party. The images, taken by a private photographer inside the drawing room at Clarence House, showed Camilla's step-granddaughter posing in a formal dress for a family album portrait. Pinned prominently to her neckline was Queen Victoria's diamond miniature. Camilla was not cleaning the piece. She was actively using it to create a permanent visual record of her own bloodline, wearing the ultimate symbols of the sovereign heritage. William viewed these photograph proofs as a direct, hostile assault on his daughter's future identity. In the modern British monarchy, visual symbols are the primary currency of power. If the public or the wider court saw the children of the Parker Bowles family using pieces historically and legally reserved for Princess Charlotte, it would completely dilute the unique status of the bloodline. William immediately realized that if those private photographs were ever published in an international magazine or leaked to an online platform, the historical narrative surrounding the miniature would be permanently corrupted. It would look like an ordinary family heirloom, divided equally among stepchildren, rather than a sacred instrument of the state. The Prince of Wales took immediate administrative action to block any further movement of the piece. He ordered the chief of the palace security network to place a total immediate freeze on all transit permits issued under the Queen's personal cipher. He also sent a formal directive to the Royal Collection Trust Management Board, demanding an immediate physical audit of every single item stored in the Waterloo Vault. William wanted to know exactly how many other historic children's heirlooms had been quietly removed under the cover of temporary cleaning waivers over the past 12 months. The tension in the palace offices reached a critical point as the audit team began tracing the transit box's route. They discovered that the diamond miniature had not been returned to London after the photograph session at Clarence House. Instead, it had been placed in Camilla's private leather travel bag and transported directly to Windsor Castle for Charlotte's birthday lunch. Camilla had brought the contested treasure into the very room where the birthday girl was celebrating, intending to let her own step-granddaughter wear it during the joint family gathering in front of the king. The factual tracking of the item proved that the removal was entirely intentional, completely destroying any excuse of a misunderstanding or a clerical error. The gold-rimmed presentation case had been kept inside a locked drawer in the Queen's private Windsor suite until the moment the guests arrived in the oak room. Camilla had deliberately waited until the family was gathered before allowing the piece to be displayed, using the festive nature of the afternoon to shield her maneuver from immediate bureaucratic interference. She believed that William would not cause a public scene on his daughter's birthday, but she had completely miscalculated the prince's determination to defend his children's birthright. The gemologists and security officials completed their forensic report by 2:30 in the afternoon, just as the confrontation inside the oak room was reaching its peak. The report confirmed that item 098 had been removed in total violation of the 1953 lineage parameters. The document was printed out and delivered directly to the king's private secretary, providing the hard, undeniable legal foundation that William needed to execute his sudden intervention. The mystery of the missing miniature was completely solved, but the political battle over its recovery was about to tear the family's private celebration completely apart. The lineage line in the sand, a formal, heavy cream envelope bearing the embossed silver crest of Kensington Palace, landed in the center of the mahogany desk in the Lord Chamberlain's office. It was the morning of May 3rd, 26. Inside the envelope was a 2-page protocol directive signed directly by Prince William's Chief of Staff. The document was written with the cold, precise language of a legal injection. It was not a standard scheduling memo. It was a formal declaration establishing a strict physical and administrative perimeter around every historical item designated for Princess Charlotte's future collection. The directive drew an absolute line in the sand, separating the sovereign bloodline from the extended step family with total legal finality. The factual parameters outlined in that 26 document were explicitly clear to everyone in the palace hierarchy. Under the old rules of the Royal Collection Trust, the monarch possessed broad discretionary power to loan minor historical pieces to any member of the extended family for private events. But the modern political landscape required a much more disciplined approach to state assets. William's new protocol permanently revoked that monarchical discretion for any item cataloged under the Sovereign Children Heirlooms list. The directive stated that no piece from that archive could be moved, cleaned, appraised, or displayed without dual signature authorization from both the reigning king and the direct heir to the throne. The tension over this sudden administrative lockdown spread rapidly through the household offices at Clarence House. Queen Camilla's advisors realized that William was not just responding to the incident at the birthday party. He was executing a systemic, pre-planned strategy to strip her office of its traditional patronage powers. For months, Camilla had been quietly working to position her own grandchildren as trusted semi-official participants in the family's private life. She wanted them to project the image of a modern, integrated family that reflected contemporary British society. But William's protocol letter made it undeniably clear that when it came to the crown's material wealth and historic symbols, her lineage was completely irrelevant. The mystery that deeply worried the Queen's legal team was whether William possessed the constitutional authority to tie the hands of the reigning sovereign in this manner. The answer was found in a detailed review of the Duchy of Cornwall's financial charters and the corporate bylaws of the Royal Collection Trust. As the Prince of Wales, William was the primary financial underwriter for the maintenance and security budgets of the Windsor Castle vaults. He officially held the purse strings for the specialized personnel who managed the preservation of those historic treasures. By threatening to freeze that operational funding, William could legally paralyze the transit system of the vaults, effectively preventing the king or queen from moving any items without his explicit consent. William's determination to defend his children's birthright was driven by a deep sense of historical duty and a fierce protection of his mother's memory. He had watched for decades as the traditional boundaries of the royal family were blurred and manipulated by internal palace politics. He was determined to ensure that Princess Charlotte's independent royal identity remained pristine, free from any outside family influence or social dilution. He knew that the unique mystique of the House of Windsor depended on the strict, unyielding application of the rules of birthright. If the stepchildren of a queen consort were allowed to utilize the historic treasures of Queen Victoria, the unique legitimacy of the sovereign bloodline would be permanently compromised. The protocol letter listed 12 specific priceless heirlooms to be locked in a designated secure cabinet within the Waterloo Vault, completely inaccessible to anyone outside the direct line of succession. This collection included a historic diamond bow brooch gifted to Queen Alexandra, a rare set of 19th century pearl hairpins worn by the daughters of King George V, and the contested diamond miniature portrait case. The directive specified that these items were to remain completely undisturbed until Princess Charlotte reached her official public debut age, at which point they would be transferred directly to her private custody at Kensington Palace. The tactical execution of this protocol began at noon that same day. A team of security technicians from the Palace Protection Command arrived at the entrance to the Windsor Castle Vault with a new set of digital encryption cylinders. They systematically replaced the locking mechanisms on the children's heirloom cabinets, updating the access codes to require a specialized biometric signature that was held exclusively by William's personal security detail. The move effectively locked Camilla out of the historical children's archive permanently, stripping her of the ability to ever use a temporary cleaning waiver to smuggle diamonds out for her family again. Camilla viewed this administrative lockdown as an act of open defiance and a direct insult to her status as the current queen consort. She argued that by completely isolating her family from the crown's material history, William was treating her children and grandchildren as untrusted outsiders who posed a threat to the state. She brought her complaints directly to King Charles during a tense meeting in his private dressing room, demanding that he use his sovereign authority to overrule the directive from Kensington Palace. But the king, fully aware of the legal and financial leverage his son held over the estate, refused to ignite a wider constitutional war with his heir over a collection of children's jewelry. The king's refusal to intervene left Camilla entirely isolated within the court administration. The senior courtiers and vault custodians quickly aligned themselves with William's new protocol, recognizing that the Prince of Wales was already exercising the raw, practical authority of the crown. They understood that while Charles held the current title, William was the long-term future of the institution, and his rules would govern the palace for the next 40 years. The lineage line in the sand had been drawn with total finality, and the boundaries of the House of Windsor had been reinforced with iron discipline against the encroaching influence of the Step family tree. William watched the successful implementation of the encryption update from his desk at Adelaide Cottage with a quiet sense of triumph. He had successfully protected his daughter's future, enforced the strict laws of the succession, and secured a vital structural advantage over his stepmother's household. The battle for the sovereign children's heirlooms had been won without a single public statement or press leak. The diamonds were locked behind biometric codes, the red lines had been defended with absolute authority, and the future king had proved that he was fully prepared to police every inch of his future kingdom behind closed palace doors. A birthday party divided. Behind the scenes, the heavy oak door of the oak room swung shut against the frame with a solid, echoing thud. It was early afternoon on May 2nd, 26. Inside the private reception space, the festive lunchtime music had been abruptly disconnected from the central audio system, leaving a heavy, dead silence in its place. Princess Charlotte stood completely still by the edge of the tea table, her hands clasped tightly behind her back, while Princess Catherine quietly guided Prince George and Prince Louis toward the adjacent corridor to shield them from the gathering storm. The colorful birthday banners and unpinned wrapping paper on the sofas looked completely absurd against the raw, unfiltered family tension that had just shattered the afternoon. The facts of the escalation inside the room were documented in an emergency incident memo logged by the on-duty Windsor Castle Protection Supervisor. Prince William stood directly in front of Queen Camilla, his hand resting on the small Morocco leather box containing Queen Victoria's diamond miniature. He had just ordered the immediate removal of the historic treasure from the clothing of the Queen's step-granddaughter, refusing to let the birthday gathering proceed by even a single minute while the state asset was being used as a personal prop. The confrontation was not a hushed, polite disagreement. It was a direct, high-stakes battle over family legitimacy and institutional respect. The tension reached its peak when Camilla refused to apologize for the unauthorized removal of the vault. She looked at William and stated that his dramatic intervention was a calculated attempt to publicly humiliate her household in front of the castle staff. She argued that the young girl had simply wanted to look nice for a family photograph, and that treating a child like a security threat on a birthday afternoon was completely unacceptable behavior from a future king. She accused William of letting historical personal resentments dictate his administrative policy, claiming that his constant policing of her children was turning every private family occasion into a toxic constitutional battlefield. William did not lower his voice or back down an inch from his position. He stated that the issue had nothing to do with personal feelings and everything to do with systematic dishonesty. He pointed directly to the temporary fashion appraisal waiver on the table, calling it a fraudulent misuse of her administrative authority as queen consort. He told her that by using a cleaning loop to smuggle a 15-carat diamond heirloom out of the Waterloo vault for her own non-blood descendants, she had committed a profound breach of trust that would completely change how her office interacted with the royal collection, trust for the remainder of the current reign. The mystery that senior courtiers scrambled to manage as the argument continued was how to resolve the deadlock before King Charles's personal health schedule was disrupted by the stress. The king, who had been sitting quietly near the window, stood up and attempted to offer a diplomatic compromise to save his granddaughter's birthday afternoon. He proposed that the diamond miniature be placed into a temporary display cabinet in the room for the duration of the tea, and he offered to loan Camilla's step-granddaughter a secondary non-lineage brooch from his own private estate collection as a replacement gift. It was a classic effort to keep the peace, but William rejected the compromise instantly. The Prince of Wales looked at his father and stated that the original heirloom had to leave the room immediately under independent military escort. He made it explicitly clear that he would not sit down at the table, cut the birthday cake, or take part in any official family photographs, while a piece of Princess Charlotte's direct inheritance was treated as a negotiable item. He demanded that the head vault custodian be summoned to the rooms with a secure transport pouch to execute a formal, independent inventory recovery right then and there. He was fully prepared to walk his wife and children out of Windsor Castle entirely, leaving the birthday party completely abandoned if his conditions were not met by the court. The hard reality of William's legal and financial power over the Windsor estate forced the king to back down. Charles looked at Camilla and shook his head, signaling that he could not allow a major family breakdown to occur over an asset dispute. The king's private secretary immediately phoned the security desk, and within 5 minutes, a senior vault auditor arrived in the Oak Room carrying a locked metal transit case. The diamond miniature portrait was carefully placed into the velvet groove. The security seal was logged, and the box was carried out of the room under armed escort, returning item 098 to the central storage facility. The physical removal of the diamonds technically allowed the birthday tea to resume, but the emotional damage within the private apartments was absolute. Queen Camilla, furious at the public reversal, refused to stay for the cake cutting. She packed her bags and left Windsor Castle within 20 minutes of the vault auditor's departure, driving back to her private country home at Ray Mill House in Wiltshire. She chose to boycott the remainder of the family weekend entirely, leaving the king to navigate the aftermath of the crisis alone with his heir. The catering staff quietly brought in fresh tea and lit the candles on Charlotte's cake once the queen's car had cleared the castle gates. The family tried to salvage the remaining hour for the birthday girl, but the festive spirit was completely gone, replaced by a cold, businesslike focus on the future. Catherine sat next to her daughter, speaking to her in low, reassuring tones, ensuring that Charlotte understood her birthright was completely secure and that her family would always stand as an unbreakable shield around her inheritance. William watched his daughter blow out the candles from his window, his expression completely resolute. He knew that the chaos of that afternoon was a necessary cost to establish a permanent boundary within the modern monarchy. He had successfully demonstrated to the entire court that the wealth, history, and symbols of the House of Windsor belonged strictly to the bloodline, and that no amount of palace manipulation by the Step family would ever be tolerated. The birthday party was divided, the internal relationships were shattered, but Princess Charlotte's heritage had been defended with absolute authority behind closed palace doors. The defended heritage of the House of Windsor. The heavy reinforced vault door of the Waterloo storage complex slammed shut with a solid, echoing metallic seal at 4 o'clock that afternoon. It was May 2nd, 26. A senior independent auditor turned a heavy steel key, locking the secure cabinet containing the sovereign children's heirlooms archive. The digital logging screen above the handle refreshed instantly, flashing a green confirmation message that item 098, Queen Victoria's private diamond miniature portrait case, was officially secured back within its designated velvet tray. Every digit of the new biometric encryption code had been successfully loaded into the central system, permanently restricting access to the direct lineage. The final structural changes to the palace inventory system were formalized in a formal administrative directive signed by the keeper of the Privy Purse on the morning of May 3rd. The document, which was circulated to all senior vault custodians across London and Windsor, stripped the office of the Queen Consort of its traditional discretionary loan powers over the children's historical collection. The updated protocol required that all future transport and maintenance requests for these specific pieces be reviewed and approved by a joint committee directly managed by Kensington Palace. The loophole that had allowed temporary cleaning waivers for personal family purposes was permanently eliminated by law. The tension within the household staff began to settle into a cold, permanent administrative reality as the week progressed. Queen Camilla remained secluded at her private civilian home, Ray Mill House in Wiltshire, refusing to attend several low-profile committee meetings alongside Prince William's representatives. Her inner circle realized that the incident at Princess Charlotte's birthday party had not been a temporary personal spat. It was a massive historic victory for the Prince of Wales, who had successfully used the crisis to permanently alter the balance of power in managing the crown's material assets. The mystery that many aristocratic families and royal watchers were left with was how this definitive administrative lockdown would affect the younger generation's upcoming public appearances. The answer was found in a strategic communications briefing issued by Kensington Palace later that month. Princess Charlotte's official birthday portrait, which was eventually released to the global media, showed the young princess dressed in a simple country sweater, entirely free from any heavy historic jewelry or diamond embellishments. William and Catherine had deliberately chosen to present their daughter as a modern, grounded individual, proving that her true authority came from her place in the succession, not from wearing smuggled vault treasures. William watched the global media coverage from his study at Adelaide Cottage with a deep sense of professional satisfaction. He had successfully protected his daughter's future, enforced the strict laws of the family lineage, and forced a total freeze on outside family influence within the historic archives of Windsor Castle. He had demonstrated to the entire court that, as the Prince of Wales, he was fully prepared to execute a total shutdown of any event to defend the integrity of the bloodline. The chaos of the birthday party was over. The priceless heirlooms were locked safely away behind biometric codes, and the future king had proved that his family's heritage remained completely untouchable behind closed palace doors. Princess Charlotte's birthday party will be remembered as the day the royal inheritance lines were permanently locked. By forcing an immediate security recovery of Queen Victoria's diamonds, Prince William made it undeniably clear that step-family members will never manipulate the sovereign vaults for personal status. The modern history of the House of Windsor is being written right now with iron discipline, ensuring the visual symbols of the crown remain exclusively with the direct bloodline.